Today on In Studio, I'm joined by Gabriel Stiritz, founder and CEO of Lexamica. Lexamica tackling a problem that sits in plain sight for plaintiff law firms, and that's referrals. Gabriel and his team are building the infrastructure that governs how cases move between firms, how referrals are tracked, how updates are delivered, and how revenue and trust move through the legal system at scale. Today, we're going to unpack what Lexamica is seeing across the market, what breaks first in referral volume scales, why referrals are becoming a measurable revenue engine, and how firms that treat referrals as real infrastructure are unlocking more predictable growth and better client outcomes. Gabriel, great to have you in studio today.
Gordon, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Of course. Gabriel, for people who may not be familiar with Lexamica, can you give us a clear picture of what the business does and the problem that exists to solve inside law firms?
Yeah, so just for a little bit of background about myself, before Lexamica, I was a CFO for a plaintiff side law firm. So I had firsthand visibility into the behind the scenes for how these firms run, whether it's mass torts, personal injury, or some other type of practice area. And for every firm in the industry, they're sending cases to each other, cases that for one reason or another, they will not be handling in-house, and then they split fees on them. And what we found when we were building out tools and technology to run our firm was that everyone who was sending a case outside of their law firm was doing it on a spreadsheet or a sticky note. And as we dove into it, this is not isolated problem to our firm, but this is really how the entire industry is operating. So huge volume, billions of dollars of cases that are being sent out of law firms, being managed, fee sharing is part of that. And there's no tracking, there's no accountability, there's no transparency for those claims. And those are really, in terms of the revenue and the ethical responsibility and liability, they're just as important as the claims you're working in-house. You're just outsourcing them to another lawyer to work. So we built Lexamica to give firms the same kind of visibility, accountability, and data on their outside cases that they expect and demand from their own team, their own staff on the cases they're working in-house.
That's helpful. And Gabriel, let's maybe use an example here of a law firm refers a case to a single colleague or friend at another law firm. Okay, one referral is maybe easy, maybe 10 is manageable, but then you get 100, 1,000, et cetera. Yeah, things probably start to break. And so what are the things you noticed that broke first when you take this manual process?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, imagine tracking hundreds or thousands of claims with their relevant statuses and clients and payments on a bunch of sticky notes or documents that are floating around. I literally got a fax of a needles report my first week when I was working in the industry. And, that was 6 years ago, 7 years ago. But literally just heard the same story last week that we still have law firms that we're beginning to work with that are getting fax reports from their referral partners. It's crazy. And so unsurprisingly, the first thing that breaks down is just the visibility into the cases. You've sent out the cases, hopefully that the people you're working with are good partners, or you want them to be, but you have no idea where the cases are. And even the best intentioned partners are leaving checks unsent. They're sending them to the wrong place. They're forgetting to pay referral fees. They're forgetting what the referral fee splits are. What fee share did we agree to 3 years ago when we both agreed to work this case together? So the visibility breaks down very, very quickly.
And at least in the world we live in today, a referral is from a human to a human. Maybe that changes at some point in the future. But fundamentally, referrals are based on a human relationship or interaction. Just talk a little bit about how infrastructure either helps manage or deal with that complexity of what maybe is easier with single digit referrals to the volumes you're talking about.
Yeah, what's really interesting about referrals in our industry, and it really is a reflection of how plaintiff side law firms run, is that they are run as businesses. They are not partnerships. They are not solo practitioners. When you get to a certain scale, law firms have professionalized. But then what happens is that referrals kind of get left by the wayside. You have an intake team, you have a pre-litigation team, you have a lit team. All of that works really well. And then when it comes to referrals, you have a managing partner who meets another one at a conference, says, "Oh, great, you seem awesome. Let's do a deal." handshake deal, email thread, that's thrown in the garbage, and now you have a referral relationship, right? Like that's not a great way to do business. It's built on trusted relationships, but then there's no follow through. And it really is a back office problem that was never solved for, that represents a large portion. Law firms that we talk to, 10-20% of all of their claims are either referred out or referred in. So it's a pretty significant portion of their volume, but it's really a back office problem that cuts all the way through to the managing partner who initiates it, which is why it's been so difficult historically to solve for the entire chain.
And maybe I don't know how you break it down exactly, but when I think about the infrastructure of pipes to send a referral, you talk about visibility falling short. Then you get into like long-term tracking of a case, then adjudication and payment. Does Lexamica solve all that whole end to end, and are they all equal in terms of their value and worth to your customers?
Sure. So the first, yes, we do all of the life cycle tracking start to finish. And the answer is that if you don't have all three, and we've broken it down into the placement of the cases. So, a normal law firm will have somewhere between 50 and 150 normal partners that they're sending their claims out to. But then you multiply that times cases, and then you multiply that across time, and that gets very complex. So you have to be able to place the cases and do it in real time and do it through a call center, right? So that's complex. That's the first stage. The second piece is these cases take 18 to 36 months to be worked on. If you drop the ball anytime during that, the case will never pay out. The client may even submit a bar complaint or sue you for malpractice, and you're legally on the hook. If you've originated that claim in 35 states, you're on the hook legally for that client, even if you're not working the case. And then clearly, you want to get paid because you spent marketing dollars to get the client in the door. You spent time, and there's opportunity cost. I could have sent this to someone else. And so we've broken that down into relay, pulse, and tally. And that is the product. And really, it's managing your external cases with the same rigor that you need to manage your internal cases. But to your point on the value prop, you have to have all three because you have to ultimately get paid, and you need to know that you're getting paid and that the cases are going to the right lawyer for the claims. So if you don't have any one of those three, you will not be able to run your business effectively. So yeah, I mean, it's all three of those. And if you miss a link in the chain, similar to how you're running your own law firm, you're losing your ability to correctly monetize those claims.
Let's bring it back to the human again. And we've mainly been focused on the referral law firm, the referee law firm, but there's a client involved here as well, typically. And so, what does this mean for the client? What is their, how do they feel about a referral? Are they aware of it? How do they feel about an interaction with Lexamica? And what role do you play in trying to drive a positive client experience?
It's a great question. And, before I was even in the legal industry, spent a long time in nonprofit. And so for me, there's even an access to justice component in this. We have, on the one hand, 75% of Americans not getting legal help when they have a legal issue. And on the other, our clients, our law firm customers who are getting tens of millions of phone calls a year and turning away many of them because they're not the right practice area. They're out of the jurisdiction where the law firm handles claims. They may be too small of a claim, too weird of a claim. And so at the end of the day, what we're able to do by creating a comprehensive network of law firms, we have over 700 different law firms. We have thousands of attorneys all over the country. We can massively increase the chance that any given client gets legal help, gets the best legal help, and that the future client who refers through Lexamica gets an even better match because we're tracking the success and the progress of the clients as they're moving through the system. So it's a better client experience, and clients who call law firms today have a better chance of even getting a lawyer to pick up the phone and to help them than they did before Lexamica. So we don't directly engage with clients. We are the infrastructure. We're B2B, but we're creating a much better client experience by optimizing for the matching and the performance of law firms.
That's helpful. And maybe let's talk about the user then in that B2B context you just mentioned. And you referred earlier to there's a relationship between managing partner and managing partner, or attorneys to attorneys, but then you talk about the back office. And so when someone implements Lexamica, what does that mean for processes for back office staff? How does that change? How do workflows change? And what do you enable for the user of your platform?
Yeah, 100%. First of so we're not replacing their teams. Usually law firms have a referral manager or someone who's in the intake team who is been given referrals to manage. And then the tooling that they have is a Word doc or sticky notes or spreadsheets. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that the largest law firms in the country are managing this on Word documents and sticky notes. And you've got a poor person who's been given the responsibility for, let's say it's 10% of the revenue of the law firm, but it's far more of the profit because there's no overhead once you refer the case out. So it's this highly profitable revenue stream for a law firm. And you've got somebody who's been stuck in the back trying to manage that themselves. When Lexamica comes in, we run an entire migration process, not only for the cases and the workflows, but we actually bring in the network of relationships as well, so that you have in one place, you have a rules engine with all of the law firms that you want to do business with. You have access to Lexamica's whole network to match cases in real time. We deliver the results to you on those cases. We have a very, very high compliance on our workflows, on the requirements that we have for the data submission by the handling firms. And ultimately, we're tracking and making sure that you're getting the payments. And so what happens is you go from trying to drag updates out of your partners and remember what deal your law firm managing partner did with this other one to you're looking at a dashboard, you're proactively managing this portfolio of claims, and then you're making strategic decisions about who do we want to be our first look partner in this jurisdiction? Do we want to launch a new practice area, a new marketing campaign? So now it becomes a proactive driver of business success rather than you've caught the tiger by the tail and you're hoping that you don't lose another six-figure check.
Yeah. Maybe if we can talk a little bit about the history of referrals a little bit, and you talked about the growth there. I would say if you were to argue that referrals historically are probably driven by existing relationships and then proximity. Like you can refer to those people you know close to you, or those you already know, or those that are close to you. With something like Lexamica, that the world opens up a little bit, and there are other parameters and things that might dictate why one firm refers to another. Largely, it might lead to better success and outcomes. Can you just talk a little bit like what Lexamica opens up in terms of that network and how firms that participate on your platform benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a number of ways, and we could look at it. But one of the fastest ones is that when we bring a law firm in, even if they have spent years building out a referral network, there I've never brought one on that has more than about 80 law firms, which really represents 60-70% of the coverage that you need to run an effective referral business process. And so the reason for that is that the remainder 30-40% of your referrals are spread out across the country. They're across all different types of practice areas. And to build that out requires way more time and effort than just about any law firm has put in, but brings pretty significant value. So one is we're able to bring that to you right out of the box because you can still say, here are the law firms that I want to do business with, and then we backfill everything else. The second piece, and this applies longitudinally, is that now instead of sending the same case to, or many cases, the same law firm that's been turning them down for 5 years and you have no visibility, you can start to optimize and track. And I have seen this happen over and over where we bring a law firm network in and we've got all, Gordon, your 10 favorite lawyers. Well, a couple of those lawyers, you've been sending cases to them. And then when we start to track, we realize that law firm is either letting every case expire, they're turning them all down. And then some of them are like, oh, I was just looking at cases because Gordon's my friend. I didn't actually want his cases. And we have 3 other lawyers who would love those cases and would actually start signing them up. And so there's lack of transparency, both in terms of the coverage of the network and then also the ability to match claims to lawyers that want them. Both of those are really new. And when you think about it, there was no way before. It's really interesting how the entire segment of referrals has become more and more important, both as advertising and marketing and have become broader. We have law firms that are lawyers on YouTube. They have a national presence, an international presence. So to do referrals, they need a national platform. But then also just the nature of advertising has changed so much that you might have been really solidly a lawyer in, let's say, Minnesota back in the day, but with people are migrating more than they used to be. It's easier to have a national brand. And so now you need broader coverage for your claims. And then as the cost of case acquisition increases, there's additional competitive pressures. People are relying more and more on referral revenue to drive their core business outcomes. So there's a lot of reasons why this is shifting, but we're seeing more and more referrals happening across law firms all over.
Let's dig into some KPIs. You just mentioned referral revenue, and I'm imagining a situation where you're going into a QBR with a law firm, or maybe you're trying to pitch a new law firm, and you're trying to assess the health of a law firm's referral network, success, process, etc. What are the things that you pay attention to? What are the things that Lexamica tracks? And how do you assess if a law firm is progressing in their growth of their referral business?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that you have to understand is that most law firms don't know anything about their referral business. Now, I can tell them more about their business without having talked to them than they know about it based on what they're tracking. One is CRMs just these law firm practice management systems largely have not been set up to track referrals at all. So there's no out of the box reports or dashboards. But then even sophisticated ones that are sending volume, they don't know who their top referral partners are by response time, by conversion rate, by updates made, by case outcomes. And so as we're going into law firms, we're asking them these questions, and it's not here's all of our numbers, let's beat them. It's, we don't know any of our numbers. Help us to identify the right KPIs, to track those, and then to optimize them. And we're able to do that because we have platform data from hundreds of law firms all over the country. But the KPIs that I'm really looking for, I mean, they're very simple. Are your law firms, are they responding to the referrals that you're sending to them? Are they accepting them? Are they declining them? How quickly? That's baseline. And again, it might sound silly to you, but these are table stakes KPIs that are not being tracked. Once the cases are open, are the law firms making substantive updates on the claims as they're moving forward? Like, we have to have baseline data. And then ultimately, we're looking for the outcomes data on what's your win-loss rate, time on desk, average value per claim. But again, it's like we have so much housekeeping to do just to get to that place that we're looking at a lot of the leading indicators on these cases before we're even getting to the longer term metrics.
Yeah, it's awesome. I would note I've been blown away in the year plus we've worked together directly of seeing the industry's growth here from a referral perspective, and then as a byproduct, your growth and your execution here. And so I think it speaks to again your execution, but also what's going on in the industry. I'd love for you to step back and maybe pontificate a little bit as to what this means for broader legal tech. I know you're a student of this space, well connected. What do you think this growth in referrals means for the industry as a whole? How your customers are increasingly coming to you and thinking about data, process, and growth? And just curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, I love the period that we're in legal tech. And I will say that my domain is more specific than legal tech broadly. I mean, Gordon, you and LegalTech Fund have the bird's eye view of the entire space, which is almost unlimited. It's massive. I'm very much focused on the plaintiff side and even inside of that single event. But the rate of change is so high. When I started in legal tech, I remember going to my first conference in 2021, and it was still a backwater. Are we really sure that law firms are going to make the move from being on servers to being in the cloud? We fast forward through COVID, they're in the cloud, and then AI hits, and now legal tech is really the hottest domain that exists inside of the entire tech industry. You've got Harvey and even up with these massive valuations. But I think what's happening to lawyers is that they're seeing the power of technology. 4 years ago, they were saying, well, why should I buy technology? Now they're saying, what should I buy? How should I buy it? And how do I make sure that this is going to create value for my firm? And that's being driven both by the rapid advances of technology, which are very exciting, but also there are some pretty massive competitive pressures. There's deregulation inside the industry. There are more and more national law firms advertising using more sophisticated digital marketing. And I think this year, we've already seen one announcement of this, but we're seeing private equity coming in and taking stakes in law firms through MSO and ABS models. And that's going to drive the competition even further. So law firms are seeing the opportunity of technology and they're being chased by the specter of competition. And it's a really interesting time to be in the space.
I love it. I love it. Appreciate you sharing. Gabriel, maybe one bonus question here. We've obviously got a large network, and there'll be plenty of listeners here to our chat. if you can ask one question or favor or requests of the network that listens here of how they might be helpful for you or the business, please share.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that we're always looking for are lawyers who want to handle cases on a referral basis. Our core business is that we are a service organization to law firms that are referring out cases. So if you want to receive cases on a referral basis, you want to pay a referral fee, please contact me. I'd love to bring you onto the network. There's no charge for that. It's a way to dip your toes in the water. We had a law firm join yesterday. I've already signed 5 cases since they started on Lexamica. 0 cost to them. They created a profile. They're on board. They're making money. So if that's interesting to you, I'd love to talk. Gabriel@lexamica.com. You can submit a form on the website, but send me an email. I'd love to chat with you directly.
Awesome. Hey, Gabriel, thank you for joining us in studio today.
Thank you, Gordon.